Hello and welcome to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging field of data science. We bring the best minds in data, software engineering, machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now here are your hosts, Frank Lavinia and Andy Leonard.
Hello and welcome back to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging fields of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. If you like to think of data as the new oil, then you can consider us Car Talk, because we focus on where data meets the virtual road. With me as ever on this epic virtual road trip down the information superhighway is Andy Leonard. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing well, Frank. How are you?
I'm doing great. So we're recording this on Labor Day, 2017, and a couple of things come to mind on Labor Day, particularly in the U.S. Cookouts. And in the United States and presumably Canada, we're kind of at the end of the summer season. So the rush is on to get as much summer in the next, 12 hours as possible. As for me, wife and kids and I are going to the Frederick Keys, which is a baseball team, minor league baseball team up in Frederick, Maryland. So we're going to catch a game. I am always eager to use those, and I think we actually didn't use them until about 2 shows ago. Yep. So maybe we can start doing some fun special effects, but without turning into one of those cheesy morning shows on the radio. Yeah. So, so I'm excited about that. And Labor Day actually brings to mind a project that I once did when I was at Microsoft for technically it was the city of Boston, but it was really for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Where they wanted to have a hackathon kind of contest to pick when is the best day to get out of town. I think it was called Make Your Escape or something like that. And I'm not sure how they've progressed that since leaving Microsoft, but the idea was to take traffic data from various sensors that they have across highways on the state and then use number crunching and to figure out when the best possible time to leave is for the holiday weekend. And spoiler alert, it turns out that, if you're thinking you're going to leave Friday morning, everyone else is thinking the same thing. So probably too late to help people this year, but there's always next year and there's always another holiday weekend. How about you, Andy? What's on the agenda for you?
Oh, I'm actually working on a presentation this morning. I know it's Labor Day and I'm working. But right after this recording, we're going to do a couple family things. We're going to gather the boys up and Emma and Christy, and we're going to head over to the park for about an hour, just kind of hang out, squeeze in one last hour of summer there. And Emma and I believe Christy are going to see a movie that Emma's been wanting to see forever. Me and the boys are going to come back here and probably get back on our computers and play and work.
Cool. Exciting, right? It sounds very exciting. In fact, isn't the new catchphrase, where are we going to go and stare at our screens? The new, where so speaking of working on Labor Day, we are very pleased to have our guest who was gracious enough to accommodate kind of the hectic schedule of that Andy and I both have. And tell us about our guest, Andy.
Well, I'd be happy to. Kent Bradshaw is a friend and a brother, and Kent and I met, it's been around 10 years ago, and we started working together at Unisys, which later became Molina, and we've worked together pretty much since then. There's been a couple of gaps where I quit first, and then he quit about a year later, and we've done a couple of big consulting gigs together. Kent's a database administrator who then learned data integration, and he knows a couple of platforms. He knows Informatica. He knows SSIS. Kent's an SSIS architect, and he is also one of the consultants who works with me at Enterprise Data and Analytics. And most recently, and really the inspiration for this show, is Kent just received his Microsoft Certified Data Scientist certificate, along with you, Frank. And we were talking about that. We were talking about, wouldn't it be nice to do a show where we get a couple people who've just gone through this process from the beginning to the end, while everything is relatively fresh in your minds, although it's several months to do this process, even if you do it really quickly,
Right.
it's several months. In fact, Frank just posted a blog post that's dated today that how to become a data scientist in 6 months. And, it's Frank really threw everything at this. I mean, you were doing it just as fast as it could be done. I think you were listening to things at like 2x speed and stuff.
Yeah.
It was like in Ghostbusters where he records 20-minute workout, but he plays it back at twice the speed so he can get it done in 10 minutes. Yeah, you were doing that. But we thought it would be really interesting while it was still fresh on y'all's mind to get y'all together and let's walk through this. Let's talk about some of the stuff, some of the great stuff that happened, some of the challenges, and just see, to let people know what is it like. Because I'll bet there's a bunch of people out there listening to our podcast that are interested in becoming Microsoft certified data scientists, and they just don't know what's involved.
Right, absolutely. So what would be your advice to that person, Kent, who's listening here and thinking, well, I want to do this, but, how hard is it? What would be your advice?
My advice, first of all, thank you all very much for letting me be part of this. It's a real honor to be sitting here with you guys and chatting about the stuff that we do every day. And thank you very much. Wow, it's people that are interested in this. When I got into it, I don't think I realized exactly how deep it was going to be, and I think what you have to do is, first of all, manage your expectations about going into this thing. It may take you a little bit longer than what you really anticipate. You read the course synopsis, and it says it should take you this long. I would pad that a little bit because I caught myself, re-listening to lectures and stuff just to get hold of what it was they were doing. Because I think I told Andy when we got into like the statistics stuff, it's like it's blowing me away because it's like I said, Andy, man, when I took statistics in school, all we had was a deck of cards and a bag of marbles, and that's all we, dealt with. And now look at all this stuff they're doing, and it was like culture shock for me. So because I'm a fossil, I'm an old guy, and but it was really cool. You kind of get on a roll with this stuff, and early on, it's getting building blocks and just, making a brick and setting it there. But then as you get into the classes, you start putting the bricks together and it starts building something. And that's where it really gets exciting. So don't get frustrated, up front because you're taking something. It's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to use this, or, this is boring and it's not really teaching me anything. Hang in there because it's going to come a point in the curriculum where you're going to have to fasten your seatbelt because it's really going to start moving, and that's where it really gets fun. So, but it's a long haul.
So yeah, I'll second that. There were definitely points early, particularly early, probably the first third. So for those of you who don't know, as of today and as of when we were doing it, it's 10 classes, the 10th one isn't so much a class as it is a capstone project. So you go through 9 classes. You actually get 9 certifications, or you actually get 10 certifications. Then you get from the other site, from Microsoft, then you get the big certification that says, now you're a Microsoft certified data scientist. So all along the way, you can kind of have, you can put little milestones up and you can post this to your LinkedIn profile. And the first couple of classes is kind of like, well, duh, that's just kind of advanced Excel. And it doesn't really feel like you're making a major change in your career, as it was with me. It's like, but you're right. I mean, like, that's a great analogy. You felt like you were building a foundation to which then you could go through the statistics class. And for me personally, the pendulum really swung in the other direction once I finished the statistics class, because then I felt like, you know what? and I would watch videos online about data science and machine learning. It was that class, after hearing all those terms and understanding the deeper meanings behind those terms, that I felt, yes, I actually am making the transition now to a data scientist. That was kind of, for me, the point of no return. Like, I'd finally done it. And that was sometime in late February, early March. And I had started the program in mid-December. So, I mean, it can take, and I was doing things pretty rapidly too, because the other analogy I like to use is like Neo in the Matrix, where, like, you know, you plug in and then you download all that information as quickly as possible. And I think I did one of the classes, I did the Python class so fast that, like, I think, Andy, that was the week I got 2 certs in like a week and a half. And
yeah, that was crazy.
That was intense. I remember, like, just like I couldn't like, it felt like I just completely overwhelmed my brain. Like, I couldn't, like, string 2 words together that wasn't code. It was very bizarre. Like, it was, I remember laying there, it was like Friday afternoon, and I was just like completely like, da, 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 da.
Well, you kept sending me screenshots of your progress, and, you know, they have a really neat little bar graph there that shows how you're doing and how much more you have to do, and then your overall score, how you've done. And I kept getting like 2 or 3 of these a day. And I was like, holy smokes, what is Frank doing over there?
No, I was just, I was kind of chuckling, you know, listening to Frank, because that's kind of the way I was. And in some of those classes, you know, you kind of have to be careful, because you kind of get addicted to it. And it's like, oh man, yeah, let me just do one more. Let me just do one more lecture. And then I could do the assessment, and that'll do it for the day. You know, and then 3 hours later, you're about 6 more, you know, modules in, and it's like, yeah, you know, just one more.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I got to the point where, so one of the things that I didn't know, so my goal all along was to be ready for the final capstone project on May 1st. And it was much to my surprise that they actually offer the capstone project 4 times a year, and that would be the first quarter of the month. So I actually missed it for April. So then I found myself at the end of, you know, in May, wondering, being addicted, like, oh my God, what am I going to learn today? And it was like, well, nothing really. So I ended up, I think this is how the phrase, there's no brakes on the F train came about, Andy.
I think so.
Was taking other classes for another miniature certification, which is the certified data analyst, which is all Hadoop and Spark and all that, because I didn't want to lose that momentum I had. Plus, just like Kent said, there's an addictive nature to these courses.
Yeah, I had to be careful. I really did. And my wife made sure I was careful.
I've had those conversations too. Yeah. But one of the things that's great about this is that it's not actually, what's interesting about this is kind of a new wave Microsoft we're seeing. In the past, this would have been kind of those tests where you go into a testing center and you study for it and then you get those certifications. This is different because it's more of a true MOOC, or MOOC, the massive online open courseware. Is that exactly what the phrase is?
Something like that.
So,
yeah. And what was interesting was it's done by another company. It's actually a nonprofit called edX, and it's edX.org. And the courses are actually free, but if you want to get a certification to prove that you've taken the classes, they're anywhere between $49 to $99 to, I think a couple of them are $149.
Yeah, well, I think they dropped the $49 deal. It's all, you know, the floor is at $99 now.
Oh, okay. So we were lucky we started when we did.
Yes, we are.
But one of the questions that, and I want to get your thoughts on this. What made you pick the edX, the Microsoft certification?
I think towards the end of last year, Andy and I, you know, were chatting around and stuff, and really became aware of the certification, Microsoft Academy, and the edX courses. And in what we were reading and seeing, it's like, you know, our life was data integration, and finding out more of the data science, really, and it gets reinforced heavily in the courses, you know, from these really super smart people, that the data integration portion of data science really comprises of anywhere from 60 to 80% of the work. And it's like, well, shoot, I'm already doing 80% of what a data scientist does. So I might as well go learn the other 20
Right.
and get a certification. But it was a whole lot more than that for me once I got into it. Because, data integration, we're typically doing data warehouses or just moving data from one environment to another and doing some shaping and architecture to it. But what really struck me in coming through the classes and incorporating data integration into it is knowing this kind of new way of looking at data, or not a different way of looking at the data, and understanding what a data scientist needs to do their job can really have an impact up front on how you integrate the data into the environment, so that even if I'm not even doing the data science end of it, I can make his life a whole lot easier because I understand what it is that he wants.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think there's also a certain aspect of respecting the statistics behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Once you study the stats part of it, it seems less like magic and more like science.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because some of the claims that are made by data science, some of them are true, some of them are exaggerated, is, the ability to predict the future. I mean, it sounds all like hocus pocus and magic, but what is fascinating is that once you learn the statistics side of it, it's like, well, it's not that mysterious anymore.
I agree. Absolutely.
But one of the things y'all mentioned earlier, and I'm not correcting you, I promise, but I just want to make sure that our listeners who aren't familiar with the program have as complete a picture as we can give them. You were talking about the costs involved. If you don't want the certification, if you don't want the certificate part of the certification, you can attend all of these courses. I think, I'm not sure about the statistics one, but I believe you can attend these courses and basically audit them for free. Is that correct?
Yeah. Any of them you can do for free.
Wow. Only if you want the official Microsoft Certified Data Scientist certificate, which both of you have achieved, do you have to pay?
That's correct.
And, I think all told, it would probably, depending on what the new floor ceiling for the price is, about $100 now. So 10 courses, I think one of them might be more expensive. That was the Columbia one. Though I've heard that the Columbia one's no longer part of the curriculum. So if you're starting now, they actually have a course done by, I think, Liberty was her name. She was in the first one. And then you had Graham Malcolm was the other guy.
Right.
And so I don't know if that, being associated with Columbia, you have to pay more money. But I mean, altogether, it's going to be somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500.
One thing I thought after going through the whole thing is, if someone just thought they might be interested in it and just kind of wanted to see what it was about, it might be in their best interest to go. The course, it was the basics of machine language, kind of an introduction to machine language type stuff. If they would audit that course, not really looking to learn it, but just kind of sit back and watch what they do with it. And, to me, that could say, wow, that's some neat stuff. I really want to go find out what this is all about. And then you start at the beginning and take the courses and come up. If you really don't have any idea what data science is all about, that way you don't take all those courses and then get up to it and say, yeah, this is not really what I want to do. And you wasted some time and money and, not really wasted. You probably learned some stuff along the way, but if it's just not your thing, you'd probably better serve to do something else. I think that'd be a good place to start, is just audit that thing and kind of get excited about it.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. I always, before going into it, I knew I wanted to do data science. So it wasn't really, I didn't have that uncertainty factor.
Yeah, well, I didn't either, but this was just kind of a retrospect, and talking to people, and they go, oh, I got this data science certification. They go, what's that? And so I started explaining it, and they kind of go, oh, okay. And I was like, you really might like it, and go check that thing out for free, and see if it's something that interests you. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah.
That's true. And what was great about this program is that you can do it in off hours. You can do it kind of in the car because there's a mobile app for it. And I found myself, waiting in line at DMV or whatever, and I'm got my headphones on and I'm listening to a lecture. And it's been a long time since I've been really that engaged to learn something new. And the professors and the courses that they've chosen, they're really great. In fact, a number of the courses are taught by two people, and they were really good. I mean, it was I'm blanking on their names right now.
Yeah, me too. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a lady. I'm sorry.
Both Princeton PhDs.
They're both Princeton PhDs. One guy was involved with the creation of the R language, and we'll put this in the show notes, who they are. And the other lady, Cynthia, was her name, and then she runs the data science, data science and society or something like that lab in Duke University, and they worked out really as a good pair because she was very much focused on teaching you the theory, and then he was very good at teaching you how to implement the code, and they both very clearly knew what they were doing. And not only that, but so when you saw it, almost got to the point where I think 4 of the courses are done by them. So you feel like them because you spend so much time with them. So whenever you saw her, you're like, oh, this is going to be deep into theory. Right. And then you saw him, it was like, all right, now, crack my knuckles. I'm going to start slinging some code now.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. The first couple of modules that Cynthia was doing in the very first course, and she started putting up all those equations. Yeah. And I'm going, oh, I'm in big trouble now. And so I kept going through. I was like, man, this is really going to be tough. And then you get to the application, or she gets to the very end and goes, but don't worry, you don't have to memorize the equations because it's built in for you. And I'm like, oh, that is so cool.
And it's always cool because you can always go back and relearn the theory. So I mean, it's kind of like
right.
For that, I mean, I really appreciated that she would explain the theory, and it wasn't just a kind of never mind, you're never gonna have to know this. But I think it was from her I learned that you have to respect the statistics, respect the math. Like in Breaking Bad, respect the chemistry. Yeah. And it was really good, and then they really played a good team. It was kind of like the good cop, bad cop team. Like the academic and practical. Working together. That was really good. And overall, the program was great because if you compare it to other ones that are out there for data science certifications, I mean, some of them are charging $40,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
That's a car. That's a nice car.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
And
go ahead. Talking about the cost. That's okay. We were talking about the cost earlier. I keep coming back to that, but the when you compare that to say, I don't know, a 4-year degree. We were talking $1,000 to $1,500 as of, September 2017. I don't know. I don't know if I'd encourage someone to do the return on investment calculation, cost benefits analysis spreadsheet on that or not. But, you could.
You mean versus the $1,000 versus the $40,000?
Well, yeah, depending on the school you go to, right. It could be $40,000 a year.
No, that's true. That's true. But the problem I had wasn't so much that I don't want to name the universities because maybe they've changed their prices. But when I looked at this about a year ago, one school, very prestigious engineering school, and they were basically looking for $40,000, and that was a certificate. And I just thought, if I'm going to spend $40,000, I'm going to have a real degree, like not just a paper. I want it printed on that fancy paper.
You want the sheepskin, bro.
I want the sheepskin, not the paper. But I mean, I suspect is that basically where they get that is people have their employers pay for it, so it's somebody else's money.
I just have to say that going through the edX courses, the quality of the instructors, I don't know that you could get much better than the people that they brought in.
I agree. It's hard to imagine I think what you really get is the name of that prestigious organization stamped on the paper versus this. And, and data science is such a new field. I think having just any certifications beats most people, unless you're a PhD in the field.
Right.
Well, and the PhDs have been kind of pushing that. I've heard colleges clearly come out against the certifications, not directly, but it's a little backhanded, and they're saying things like, well, you have to have a PhD to be a true data scientist. And Frank, you had a really interesting data point conversation with, I forget her name. I just remember that she's
Kristen Tola. Yeah. I'm probably mispronouncing her last name, but yeah.
Yes. And she's Buck Woody's boss, which right there, I have tremendous sympathy for the woman.
Patience of a saint.
Just kidding, Buck. Buck was an awesome guest, by the way. And so, yeah, she said something to you about that.
And she said I was a data scientist, and that even though she has a PhD, she recognizes that you don't have to have a PhD to be a data scientist. And, at that point, I think we were in the middle of the capstone project and it wasn't completely done yet. But when, if one of the Jedis in the Jedi Council says you're a Jedi, I'm going to go with that.
There you go. Give me the sword.
That's right. So, I mean, it's a very interesting field because it's one of those, I think we're in one of those times in places where something that was securely kind of strictly an academic discipline is now being taken out and put amongst the engineers.
No, that fits. And, I'm reminded of a phrase of a friend of mine when you said that, the engineers, he likes to refer to groups like this as the unwashed masses. And, it fits. I mean, it fits, and it goes to what Kent said earlier about the the data integration side. I mean, we've been slinging code for decades. Kent and I have. I've been doing data integration since before I knew what it was called, and to see that it's such a big part of what data scientists do now. And we had this conversation with, in fact, our first interview was with Jen Underwood. And not long after that interview, which is a great show, by the way, go back and listen to it. And not long after that, Jen posted a note on LinkedIn where she had spoken with, I think it was a CEO, and they had received hundreds of resumes from people who claimed to be data scientists. And he began interviewing them and asking them questions about, analytics and, like in the OLAP days, right? Online analytical processing. And he began asking them questions about shaping data, which is a data integration function. And he said nobody knew anything about that. And he's smart enough, this particular CEO was a male, he was smart enough to know that a data scientist's job requires a lot of that stuff, right? It requires the old stuff we used to do with cubes and still do, facts and dimensions. It requires knowledge of shaping data, which is the stuff we still do with data integration. And he just wasn't finding anybody that was answering those questions to his satisfaction. And I found that astounding.
Well, I think part of it was that CEO's insistence was that he wanted to have people with degrees in data science or something like that. Whoever that CEO was seemed to have a expectation of having someone who was had a PhD or advanced degree in statistics or data science, as it were, even though...
I'm not sure, Frank. I'm not sure. I think he was looking for certified people. I think he was actually pulling in people who had recently certified.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's my understanding, but I could be wrong.
So my interpretation of the same story, and I guess this goes into how, the game of telephone, was that he was insistent on getting people with PhDs. And while they knew all the theories, they asked them what ETL was, and they had no idea.
Wow.
So, which is for those who don't know, ETL is extract, transfer or transform. Transform and load. So, which is kind of a key thing in data engineering. And I think what we're seeing now is that the dawn of quote unquote data scientist becoming a two-field type thing, where it's data scientist and data engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, we had that recent interview with Stephen Fowler, and he made some really good points along those lines. Go listen to that one too. Like, if you listen to this show, now you've got to listen to 2 or 3 others.
We're going to get you hooked, people. We're going to get you hooked.
I think you need to sell the box set, Andy.
That would be funny. No, but we've been very fortunate, though, Ken. I mean, we've had some amazing people in a very short period of time. And
yeah, I know. That's why I was really shocked y'all asked me.
I was going to say present company included.
I guess it's because it was a holiday.
But no, I mean it's an interesting time to be in this field, because it's a lot like what the web was when I first started. Well, who is a webmaster, right? And the first people's knee-jerk reaction was, well, it's the system admin, and then it became, well, maybe it's the lead developer,
right?
And then it became, no, it should be the person who's in charge of content. And
That's true.
And then eventually that kind of debate got settled, because you don't hear much about who's the webmaster anymore, right? You have kind of the engineering team leads, and you have kind of the content leads, and then you have a system administrator. So that one role kind of became 3 different roles.
Right.
And
I hear you saying that about the data engineer and the data scientist, and I think that was a very cogent argument that Stephen offered in the show about how that's splitting into what it should be, really, because it's hard to find people. As you were telling your side of your interpretation of the story, it's hard to find PhDs who understand how to sling code, who understand data integration. It's not that they're not smart enough to know it. My goodness, they're way more smart than they need to be to understand how to do what we do. It's just they don't have the experience. It's not something that they're taught, and it didn't seem important at the time.
Well, that's something they have the grad students do, just sling the code for them.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Get me a data set.
That's right. Just do this. I don't want to know how you do it.
Oh, man.
One thing has really been cool. I think, especially going through the curriculum and all that, getting the certification, is since that's happened, all of a sudden the IBM Watson commercials on TV, where the elevator repairman shows up, and it's like, well, the elevator's not broken. He says, well, some guy called and said it was, and it was Watson. And that's the predictive analytics. That's the exercises we went through in the curriculum, is saying, according to this data, it looks like you may have a problem with elevator number 2 within the next 3 days. So you can take care of it right now if you want, and the out in the vineyard, it's Watson says, well, it looks like your yield is suffering over there because you're over irrigating. You may want to back off on that, and that's just and I'm going, hey, that's what we've been doing in the classes, and it was just really cool how it's just slowly eking its way into all aspects of our lives.
Yeah, and I'll have to second that, because a year ago I had to explain, like, well, this is what I want to do next, and then it was kind of like, I don't understand. A lot of people wouldn't understand, and now I can point them to the Watson commercials.
Yeah, and they go, they can't do that. They can't do that.
Well, it's magic.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can.
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Someone said that.
It was Arthur C. Clarke.
It was Arthur C. Clarke, yep.
And this is the point in the show where we thank our sponsors who make Data Driven possible. You know, on Data Driven, we talk a lot about data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. But did you know the hardest part of any data science related project is data integration? Data scientists often call data integration data wrangling or the icky word munging. But it's all about making sure the analytics engine that you're using has valid and clean data. Enterprise Data and Analytics specializes in data integration and can help your enterprise build better data integration solutions faster with best practices and automation. Enterprise Data and Analytics offers training and consulting services for SQL Server Integration Services, SSIS, and Business Intelligence Markup Language, or BIML. Visit entdna.com to learn more. Enterprise Data and Analytics. Data, it's in their DNA.
Well, Kent, we have some standard questions that we like to ask guests on our show, just so folks can get to know you a little bit better.
Uh-oh.
Yes. One of them is, how did you find your way into data? And specifically, did data find you or did you find data?
Oh, I would have to say that data found me. I kind of took the long route from what most people do. I actually had a part-time job in high school working at a bank operations center. And I enjoyed it, and I just didn't want to go straight into school. And they offered me a full-time job. So I went ahead and took it, and I started night school. I said, I'll take some classes and, kind of work my way towards that. But, this work thing and making some money is pretty cool. But I quickly got myself into the new department, and I actually was the department. I found out it's just they called it a department. But it was that new thing called ACH. Which is, it's an antiquated term now probably, but automated clearinghouse. That was the big hot thing, and we were doing, automated payrolls and Social Security direct deposit, and all that stuff was new.
Nice.
And so I got into that, and that allowed me to work very closely with the programmers at the bank. And so and they were very cool in that they would, kind of explain what it was they were doing with this data that I was providing. And it's like, wow, that is pretty neat. That's kind of interested. I was always kind of a engineering numbers type kind of guy, and this just intrigued me. Yeah. And I said, you know what, I think that's kind of direction I'd like to try to go in. But then it's like, well, I don't have a college degree and all that stuff. So I looked in for places that would actually have a trainee program in programming. And as luck would have it, the state was one of those. And so I plugged along, and about a year later, I got a job in operations at the state. And because of the other experience and stuff that I had, within a year after that, I got a trainee job. And that was my goal. So I pushed to get myself in position for that. But I got a trainee job, and in a couple of months, that'll be 39 years ago that all started.
Wow. And
it's just been quite the journey since then. It started in mainframes, card systems, the old card sorter thing, well, that was, what a nightmare that was. Well, that's a story for another day. But, then worked into client server. I was doing SQL Server 4.22 and just kind of meandered my way right on up through, and eventually got my college degree from night school, and just decided at some point it's like I've wasted all this, not wasted, I hate to say that to my professors. I spent all this time pursuing this degree. I want that piece of paper on the wall to, remind myself of all the ball games and Monday Night Football and stuff that I gave up. So that's kind of how it happened. I was just doing a job, and all of a sudden data showed up and kind of swept me off with it like a tidal wave.
Wow. It's interesting how people feel that, data chose them as opposed to choosing data. It kind of jumps out at you and grabs you.
Yeah. That's what happened to me.
So here's our next question. What's your favorite part of your current gig? And I do realize our co-host is kind of your boss, so.
Yeah. I love working with Andy Leonard.
That's an excellent answer, Ken.
And that is the absolute truth. Andy and I just work so well together. Andy kind of comes, we both have like this pseudo engineering thing going on, but Andy approaches things like from a developer's point of view, and me kind of being a DBA and in past life and still doing a bunch of that, but into the database development side of things and the architecture side. We approach a problem from two different ways, and I think between the two of us, the solutions that we come up with are the optimal thing, given the set of circumstances that we had. And I think that's the cool thing that I really like about what I'm doing now, being the consultant, is when we're brought in, it's not typically to do the mundane, everyday type stuff. It's somebody's got a problem and they need it fixed. And that's the cool part. It's the challenge of finding that problem and fixing it, and the satisfaction of kind of like walking away like the Lone Ranger going, well, my job is done here. and ride off into the sunset. But yeah, it's the problem solving, and that's what I really enjoy.
Well, I enjoy working with you too, Kent. It's truly a joy. I joke, but it's only half joking. I feel like you're the big brother I never had. So, love working with you, brother. All right, so we have another. Actually, we've got three of these complete the sentence type questions. When I'm not working, I enjoy blank.
Oh, it has to be my family, especially got the kids, and I'm a grandfather, and just love that. So my family, I love road trips with my wife. We just, I kind of joke that we kind of keep the motor running so that we can go at a moment's notice. And then there's golf. That's kind of my addictive thing. I love my golf, and so as much as I can, that's what I do.
So here's a follow-up question: do you track your progress or lack of progress to get data points on your golf?
Now that would be way too frustrating. Now, I learned a long time ago that golf is a game to be enjoyed and not taken seriously. I actually had a side business for about 12 years where I custom made golf clubs, and I was really getting into it, and I found myself get to the point as technology entered into that area also, it was starting to get a little overwhelming, and I said, you know what, I'm getting in too deep into this thing to where I'm not even really enjoying playing anymore, because all I'm thinking about is the technology of it. And I said, you know what, and this happened when I moved. We left where we were and came, and we got a new place, and it's in a golf community. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just going to play golf and enjoy it, and let it be my escape rather than my captor. So, so no, I don't capture any of that. The only thing that happens is I enter my scores, and the VSGA calculates my handicap, and that's about as technical as I get with it.
So here's another, complete the sentence. I think the coolest thing in technology today is?
Well, after what I've been through in the last 6 months, to me, it's data science. It's the next step. It's up to this point, to me, data has always been looking back, and what happened, what has happened, or what's happening right now. And data science is taking it to that next level. It's like, okay, based on that, what's going to happen? And I just was blown away by it. It's just so cool that you can, with the accuracy that we can, predict things. And I guess just because it's the new shiny thing in the store right now, or in my store, that's the thing that's really I think the coolest thing going.
Well, that's very cool, Kent. One last, complete this sentence. I look forward to the day when I can use technology to blank.
Oh, yeah, I saw that question, and I said, yeah, Andy is going to be sorry that he asked me that question.
Uh-oh.
Because Andy already knows this, but I guess everybody else doesn't know me. I'm like the contradiction of existences, and kind of like being as old as I am, I sit back and I reminisce about the simplistic old days. And actually, I look forward to the day when I retire, and most of technology I'll load up in a truck and send it down the road, and I'm just going to sit on the porch.
All right, so I have to ask, it's a related question from the last answer. What is VSTA? Is that Visual Studio Golf add-in or something like that?
No, that's the Virginia State Golf Association.
Got it.
I didn't know either.
No, I didn't. I was my first thought was, being the nerd that I am, was like, that must be some kind of Visual Studio add-in.
Yeah, I've got one. I'll sell you, Frank.
There you go. If we have an enterprising audience member, they can probably build that a golf thing in any way. So finally, our last question is, share something different about yourself. We do have the general rating on iTunes, and we like to keep it. So keep it a family podcast, and answer appropriate for a family show.
Okay, I will certainly do my best to stay within those confines. Something different about me. I guess it's I guess I would like to share a life lesson with folks. Andy's heard me, part of this. We talked, in fact, the other day we were having dinner with Ben McEwen and reminiscing back about things that happened in the past. And I remember when I was getting a job with Unisys, Ben was going to be the big boss, and he really shocked me. I was going to be working remotely, and he just shocked me because it was the first time I'd ever heard anything from someone like this in the work environment, where he said, "You got to promise me that you're going to make a concerted effort to know to draw the line between work and home life, and know when to turn the machine off and walk away." He says, "Because you're no good to me, burn out. And I need you to, stay on top of your game." And sometimes that means stopping and not doing it. And that struck me. And I said, not only does it doesn't do him any good being burnt out, but it doesn't do anybody else around you any good being burnt out. And I kind of learned that. I was thinking about all of that, and I've kind of tried. I wasn't really successful for a long time, but I kind of tried to hold on to something like that by just what I witnessed growing up with my father. And I tend to reminisce about him a lot. He passed away in today's terms relatively early. He did get to enjoy a little bit of retirement time, but one thing I learned growing up was, you can have goals and you can work hard and try to achieve them, but you really need to take the time to enjoy the journey as you go, because there's so much that you miss. And that in conjunction with what Ben said just really struck home. And, as we talked about taking the courses and how addictive it could get and everything. And that was a short-term thing you take in the class. But I find with technology, and I think this is what gets me back to wanting to go sit on the porch type thing. I find that with technology, as fast as it is and as much as it has inundated our daily lives, it is way too easy just to get caught up in that. It's like the people that are walking down the sidewalk, and they've got their phones stuck, to the front of their face. And, and they're falling into the fountains at the mall and stuff because they're totally unaware of what's going on around them. And, in my opinion, we need to keep in mind that with all this great stuff we got around us, there are things in our life that are far more important than any of that. And I think we need to keep everything in perspective and try to keep the right priorities.
Very wise word.
Thank you. That's where I'm different.
I think everybody needs you always need a contrarian in the room.
Here I am. And I'm cheap.
Kent is definitely the 10th man.
Yes. I was waiting for the zombie World War Z reference. So
I couldn't resist.
So where can folks find out more about you? Do you have a blog? Are you on Twitter, LinkedIn?
Like I said, I'm the contradiction of existences, and I am totally under the radar. I do, I've got my LinkedIn page. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm working on my own website right now. My company is called Tutor Data Solutions, and that's because I live in the only English tutor house in the neighborhood, so that way everybody knows who I am. But it's tutordatasolutions.com and or tutords.com, excuse me. And you can always get to me through Enterprise Data and Analytics. That's where I live mostly, is being Andy's sidekick, and that's about it. So, not too many avenues, but not too many to have to remember either.
Good point.
That's true. And I know for a fact you're on LinkedIn, Kent, so you're not completely under the radar.
Not under the radar. I do a prairie dog every now and then.
That's funny. Well, Kent, this has been an awesome show. I really appreciate both you and Frank sharing about your experience becoming Microsoft Certified Data Scientist. If you're listening to this show, I hope you've learned something about the entire process, and I hope you'll consider it, give it a look. Maybe you learned that it doesn't have to cost you money to gain the knowledge. Maybe you learned something about ethics. Maybe you learned something about just the job of being a data scientist. Whatever it is, I think this was a really great show, and I really appreciate both of you taking time to do this, especially on a holiday.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it, guys.
Thanks again, Kent, and thanks to everyone who's helped make this show a success. We are pretty close to crossing the 20,000 download mark, which is quite impressive considering we launched Memorial Day weekend. And so this has been truly a summer of data science. Wouldn't you say, Andy?
I would.
Thanks for listening to Data Driven. Don't just listen. Become a data driver by going to datadriven.tv to sign up to join the community, access to special events, tips and tricks, and more. Sign up today at datadriven.tv.